we would gradually progress, I think, in a way to a more homogenous society. I think this idea that there's just going to be some, mass genocide, that white people are just, will be unable to refrain themselves, and that's what they want to do is just go on some murderous rampage. It's actually pretty disgusting. It's very disingenuous. I find it pretty offensive.
Is this guy the biggest snowflake or what? I find that offensive. For those who don't know, this is Nathan Damigo. Nathan Damigo calls himself an identitarian, which is just a politically correct way of saying white nationalist or ethno-nationalist or whatever these clown boxes want to call themselves these days. They're really not much different than Antifa. It's just that instead of fighting for social justice or the proletariat, identitarians like Nathan Damigo fight for white identity!
Well, that just sounds like racism with extra steps.
Anyway, YouTuber Some Black Guy had Nathan Damigo on recently for a live stream, and I want to respond to a few of the points that Damigo made throughout the interview. I will link to the interview down below for anyone that wishes to watch it in its entirety, just to make sure that I'm not taking anything out of context.
Usually words, 99% of the time, in my experience, words like white supremacist, racist, Nazi, xenophobe, so on and so forth, those are really just words that are used to undermine legitimate European interests. I would call myself an identitarian. I believe that people have interests based on their identities, and that identity is a very powerful thing. It's kind of a lens through which you look at the world and through which other people look at you.
Okay, people do, or at least should, act on self-interest. After all, everyone is just an individual, and everyone is going to have different desires and goals and aspirations and values in life. Race is just a physical attribute of your body. The problem with identitarianism is that it predicates one's identity and one's values and one's aspirations on race and ethnicity. It would not be any different if you simply identified with having a big nose or a hairy back or small feet. Imagine if someone tried to start a movement for people who were 5'2" or people who had unibrows.
That's ridiculous!
This is a provable fact, given that if two people of two different ethnic backgrounds procreated, they would give birth to a unique individual that has traits from both parents.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
And identity is in a way a dialectical process. It's not completely how we wish to identify, but again, how those around us also identify us. So it's not completely devoid of other people. But I would have to say that, yes, I believe that all people, not just white people, but all people have interests, whether that's racial interests, whether that's interests based on gender, sex.
There's no such thing as racial interest or gender interest, because not everyone who is white or Asian or Latino or whatever will share the same interests and desires and values.
Another one, we all have interests based on these things, and I find it especially the people who will, say, hey, all these other people have interests based on the demographic that are attached to. I find it highly disingenuous for people to say that certain groups of people have interests and other people do not. So I would call myself an identitarian, and that's why I started the organization Identity Europa.
Let's look at Nathan's website, Identity of Europa. As you can see with their mission statement, we are a generation of awakened Europeans who have discovered that we are part of the great peoples, history, and civilization that flowed from the European continent. Join us, become part of the fraternity. And look at their flyers. Our future belongs to us. Serve your people. This website also links to the National Policy Institute video that was created by Richard Spencer. So there we have it. Nathan is simply selling a different form of collectivism.
We can go ahead and we can move forward
and discuss our interests as a collective, as an aggregate.
I've also noticed that collectivists all operate from the same playbook. First, tell everyone that they're not individuals, but they're merely part of some bigger collective.
Who are you? I'm not talking about your name or your occupation. I'm talking about something bigger, something deeper. I'm talking about your connection to a culture, a history, a destiny.
Then sell people on a utopian vision, a future or a world where everything will be sunshine and rainbows and kittens after everyone comes together to work to pave the world to said utopia. Or use the opposite tactic, warn everyone of a threat to civilization and say that your ideas and your movement are the only solution to the threat.
So long as we avoid and deny our identities, at a time when every other people is asserting its own, we will have no chance to resist our dispossession, no chance to make our future.
Also use bogus and misleading information to convince followers and to disprove doubters, mock, ridicule, shame, and dismiss anyone with legitimate criticisms, and when all else fails, use force.
A white person. You are part of the story of Europe. You have a deep connection with Rome. You have a deep connection with Athens. You have a deep connection with Byzantium, with this whole world that's been ripped away from you, and instead they substituted some disgusting bullshit football game.
Holy shit, this guy really hates football.
We lose ourselves in this false identity of something like football, this billion-dollar circus that we want to substitute for something real, that we want to substitute for our homes and our families, that we want to substitute for our senses of ourselves. Yes, that is absolutely sick. Yes, if I could wave a magic wand, I would absolutely ban football.
So identitarian Richard Spencer is a fun-shaming loser that wishes he could ban football. It's almost as if he does not believe that people have the right to pursue their own happiness. Sounds pretty un-American.
America, fuck yeah!
And one thing I was wondering, because on the topic of immigration, and you know, there are like communities of immigrants that seem to be doing very well for themselves. Like, for example, to the south of me, there's a Korean community, and I don't hear a damn peep from them, and they, you know, it's all well and good. And then to the north of me, there's a Chinese community that I actually even lived in for about a year, and it was quite pleasant. And to that, like to people that actually can like assimilate, or you know, really and actually genuinely benefit, do you have a problem with that?
Yes, I would have to say that I would oppose, even if there was a group that had a higher average IQ, that just, you know, produced lots of you know, lots of wealth and stuff like that. I would object to that for multiple reasons. I think a good example, perhaps, and I think it was Amy Chua wrote about this in World on Fire. She herself is from a Chinese family, and she had an aunt who lived in the Philippines. And in the Philippines, they're actually the Chinese basically own like every major corporation in the Philippines, and this has created a great amount of animosity between the native Filipino people and the Chinese, because the Chinese have a massive influence in Filipino politics, and in fact, her aunt was murdered by their housekeeper, Amy Chua's aunt, I believe. She talks about it in the book. So there becomes an issue of identity, because the Filipinos say, we see these people, they're different from us, they have a different culture, there is an us and a them.
Again, this is really not much different than Marxist rhetoric. Just as Karl Marx sought to establish a classless society in effort to avoid class warfare and class conflict, Nathan Damigo and the identitarians are seeking to establish a homogeneous society in effort to avoid racial tensions and racial conflict, which all sounds appealing given that nobody wants war and nobody wants conflict and nobody wants tensions. However, a society that embraces individualism and champions and celebrates individual achievement will not have such issues.
And this tribalism is something that's universal. It's something anthropologists have seen throughout the world, and it's something that's not going to go away. We're not going to magically, a lot of people are like, oh, well, we just need to evolve. Well, this is something that's deeply ingrained. Identity and in-group, out-group thinking is something that is very deeply ingrained within our species through literally millions of years of evolution. And it's not something that's going away anytime soon without some form of biological, whatever it is that creates that in the brain, that behavior. Until we discover what that is, there would really be no way to essentially make that behavior go away.
Okay, let's assume that what Nathan Damigo is saying here is completely true. I don't give a rat's ass what biological factors or whatever motivate humans to act tribalistically. Acting on pure instinct is fucking stupid. I'm also biologically wired to overeat into obesity and to have as many babies as I possibly can. Just because human beings are biologically wired to behave in a certain manner does not mean that said behaviors are a good idea. So what if human beings are biologically wired or genetically wired to act tribalistically, or if cultures in the past have predicated themselves on tribalism? Tribalism is a primitive way of thinking and always leads to war and tyranny. And given that man is the rational animal, I don't think it's absurd to expect human beings to embrace reason and act rationally rather than acting on pure impulse and seeking to join some sort of tribe.
I mean, America was founded as a, you could call it a white nationalist country.
Bullshit.
I've noticed that this is a common play for American collectivists claiming the mantle of the founding fathers. Religious collectivists like to say that America was founded on Judeo-Christian values. Egalitarians like to claim that America was meant to be a democracy by the people and for the people. And now we have identitarians claiming that America was founded as a white nationalist country. It is true that America was founded by white men of European descent, but it was not founded as a white nationalist country. America was founded as a country meant to protect individual rights and property rights. It is interesting how the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution at the time of its ratification make no reference to race, ethnicity, or heritage whatsoever. Terms like race, ethnicity, European, white, heritage, none of those terms can be found. Even when reading through the Federalist Papers, whenever the term race is used, it's usually used to describe the human race. Hell, you'd think that a phrase like all men are created equal would be enough for someone like Nathan Damigo. If America was meant to be this white nationalist country, then why not have a constitutional amendment restricting non-European immigration from the start? Why not make it explicitly clear in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution that the purpose of this country is to preserve the white race and look out for the benefit of white people? If European heritage was of the utmost importance, then why divorce the colonies from Europe in the first place?
I don't know.
But we didn't just get here overnight. Paradigms have histories. They don't emerge out of bubbles. And it took a long time to get here. Ideally, it took 50 years. Ideally, we could, if we were to change our values as a country, what do we value? Again, this goes back to what I was discussing earlier. If we want to live in a society that is gradually progressing as measured by social currency, social trust, so on and so forth, then we're going to change our immigration policies, so on and so forth. And we would gradually progress, I think, in a way to a more homogenous society. I think this idea that there's just going to be some, mass genocide, that white people are just, will be unable to refrain themselves, and that's what they want to do is just go on some murderous rampage. It's actually pretty disgusting. It's very disingenuous. I find it pretty offensive. And I usually just see it as a way, again, it's just a way to shut down the conversation.
Okay, I'm willing to give Nathan Damigo the benefit of the doubt here. He does not appear to be advocating for any immediate violence or anything like forced removal or genocide. But it is important to note that it is his premise that ultimately leads to such actions. If men are motivated by a desire to bring about an all-white homogenous society, eventually they will ponder ways to bring about such a vision. And those methods may include eugenics, forced removal, genocide, and other heinous measures. I also love how Nathan Damigo dismisses comparisons to social justice warriors as, it's just the horseshoe theory.
This is like the opposite side of the identity politics that the left are pushing. Like they're advocating for, whatever it is, like if it has to be about transgenderism or whatever. And then there's the other side of it where, you guys are, like you said, you're identitarian. And what do you say to the people that think that it's just all bullshit? Like say people really shouldn't be
the horseshoe theory people.
Yeah.
the Sargons out there who say, we're just right-wing social justice warriors and whatnot.
But it's true. And I respect Nathan Damigo for preaching nonviolence by saying that he does not want any more Berkeleys.
We have to talk to each other because if we don't, we're just going to get more Berkeleys, and I really would prefer not to have that.
But just like Antifa, the identitarian movement is a collectivist movement. The identitarian movement, like Antifa, is anti-capitalism, anti-individualism, anti-freedom, anti-happiness, and ultimately anti-American.
I've always found this focus on capitalism or liberty or freedom to be a kind of negative ideal. It's not really an ideal at all, because otherwise freedom is basically meaningless, in my opinion. I think it's in a way you're fetishizing a kind of anti-ideal.
On a final note, I will defend these guys' right to free speech, but that's as far as I'm gonna go. I think Richard Spencer's rant about football says all you need to know.
With Byzantium, with this whole world that's been ripped away from you, and instead they substituted some disgusting bullshit football game. If I could wave a magic wand, I would absolutely ban football.
Just look at him. Richard Spencer strikes me as someone who's very angry, bitter, unhappy. He strikes me as someone that hates life and hates humanity and thinks he's this moral authority who knows what's best for you and me and everyone else. And I say, fuck Richard Spencer and the identitarian movement. They're really no better than the cultural Marxists or the religious right. It's just that instead of worshiping a deity or worshiping the state, the identitarians worship white ethnicity, which is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard.